All right, so welcome to Scroll Sessions. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Greg Woodfield to the show. Greg is a dynamic entrepreneur and strategist with a diverse background in spanning technology, business, community leadership. He's currently serving in key roles such as Chief Strategy Officer at Search Party, Chairman CEO of Chaos Holdings, CEO of Data Rebels Agency, and Greg brings a wealth of experience and insights to the agency world and marketing in general. So we're going to dive into Greg's journey today, talk about innovative approach to business, marketing, and the lessons he's learned along the way. Greg, stoked to have you on the show.
This is amazing. Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Seriously.
of course. Yeah, no problem. I know we've been connected for a while on LinkedIn, like most of our guests on the show, but it's been fun to kind of see all the things that you're doing on top of having a family. Like I just look at and just, again, your introduction and it's like, holy cow, you're busy.
Yeah, I mean, I am busy, but I think that's just like who I am. Like
Yeah.
authentically, I'm all over the place.
I love it.
In my brain, like constant chaos, hence the name Chaos Holdings. It's just,
Yeah.
I enjoy doing a lot of things and I enjoy not being busy, but I enjoy building. And so for me, if like I'm not building something new, I learned very quickly after
get
college that I'm like, I can't stay at one job. Like it's not for me. And that's okay. Like people
Yeah.
who do that, not knocking you. It's just, that was not for me. I had to be doing a lot of different things.
Yeah, no, I
So,
love that.
yeah.
I feel like it's with most entrepreneurs I talk to, that is more or less who they are. It's like innate. Do you feel like you were kind of born with that, or do you feel like that's something that's been learned over time? Or
Yeah, yeah. I actually do feel like that's just who I am, you know? Like
Yeah.
my dad, he's an eye doctor, but he's an entrepreneur, right? My brother, he's an entrepreneur. My other brother, he's an entrepreneur, right? I have my sisters, right? They're
Kinda
entrepreneurs in
running the
their own.
family.
And so in a way, like I've kind of grown up around entrepreneurs to where I never really saw my dad get home at 5:30, right? I watched him work every weekend, like Saturdays, half Saturdays, like till I was 16 years old.
Yeah.
You know, I was responsible for paying for like my car at a very early age, like insurance,
I love it.
gas,
I love it, man.
everything.
That's fantastic.
So that's, you know, one thing I think that has made me who I am. But the other side to it is like, as a kid, I remember stealing golf balls from the barn golf course. So, Corey, if you're listening, I'm sorry. But like, I'd go to the golf course and I'd steal golf balls like out of their, you know, ponds when I was little. And then I'd go and take them home in like a pillow sack and then wash them in a bathtub. And my mom, like,
Did you resell them, or did
yeah,
you just
yeah,
golf
of
with
course,
them?
of course, yeah.
Okay.
Like that's how I was gonna make money for my
Yeah,
Pokemon
yeah.
cards, my Yu-Gi-Oh cards, right?
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
and so I think as like a little kid, I knew like I wanted something, but I knew like money was kind of the medium that I needed to have in order to like get what I wanted. And so I just started doing a lot of these like little things. In high school, it was like selling and trading cards and baseball cards, and now it's just kind of morphed into just a ton of businesses. So
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. I'm very similar. Like I felt like it was very much born into me. I think I tried to like shove myself down a certain path because both my parents are also doctors too, and it just like it just wasn't for me, you know. And so I got right into entrepreneurship and had a W-2 in like I don't know 12 years at least. So it's been a fun 12-year journey, but like I'm super pumped for the rest of my career in entrepreneurship, and I'm sure you are too, because it's just like it becomes part of who you are, and it'd be super hard to try and go back. I feel
yeah,
like.
yeah, I couldn't go back. Like I've told my wife this many times because she's actually quite the opposite.
Yeah.
Not from an entrepreneurial perspective, because she actually runs 3 different businesses, right? And
Yeah.
so she runs a violin studio and she has I think like 30 or 40 students in that studio in North Ogden. Then she has 2 other businesses that I can't mention, but they're in the D2C space, and she's like in the process of creating it, and she's you know, making molds in China and all this stuff, which I never
That's
thought she'd do.
awesome.
But I think she saw like my wild hair and just like my drive to like go and actually create something from nothing,
Yeah.
and then like see some of those things like work in like a big way. And she's like, yeah, like it's possible. And I think it's not to say that like I'm that person to her, but like I feel like having,
It's rubbed off on
yeah,
her a
it's
little
rubbed
bit.
off on her, but I feel like having somebody who can also check you is like really good too, because as
Yeah.
an entrepreneur, you get high on your own supply, or you drink your own bathwater
Yeah,
sometimes, right? And
Yeah.
so it's
Somebody
good to have
to
that
ground ya.
balance.
No, the spouse is huge. Like we should hang out more because my wife does a similar thing. Like she has an art studio she runs, the same amount of
Crazy.
students, and she's got her own little businesses too. And she was not like that before we were married. Her parents were teachers. Like
Yeah.
she was a teacher as
Yeah.
well.
Yep.
Like wanted to do that steady thing, and it's kind of the
Yeah.
entrepreneur bug is kind of rubbed off a little bit. And
Yeah.
I'm stoked for her and stoked for you guys.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, my parent or her parents, same thing. Like her dad has worked at the same job for 40 years.
Yeah.
And he's he's one of the chief executives now at the job that he's in. And so it's just kind of funny because she grew up with a very stable life, where in entrepreneurship, it's never stable. I mean, it can be consistent later down in certain portions of your career in entrepreneurship for sure, and very lucrative.
But those early years.
Yes, those early years are it's just a fight and a struggle to say, like, am I actually going to like make this work?
Yeah.
Like, it's you versus you, but in a lot of ways, it's just like, how much are you willing to take, you know, to kind of get to that goal? So
No, I love that. What got you into the agency space? So maybe take us back to like some of your early entrepreneur ventures, and then into kind of now more or less the agency space.
yeah, so I don't know how far back you want me to go, but I'll throw it back to
the
probably
beginning,
college.
Man. Yeah.
So college, I had a mentor, and his name's Alan Hall. He's pretty legit in the Ogden space. He's funded schools and parks and done an insane amount of philanthropy, right? And he came to an entrepreneur, I guess it was like a class, and then he started the entrepreneur minor at Weber State. And he said, hey, like, you should come into this. And I said, okay. So I listened to his talk, and he said, it's all about your customer. Like, be obsessed about your customer. He said, nothing else matters but the customer. And this guy created Market Star, right? Skull Candy, Mercado Partners, right? Some very like influential stuff, I feel like, in Utah. And listen to him just talk, and I'm like, man, like, I want to be that guy. Like, I want to be the guy that makes so much money in his career that money no longer matters, but he can now give back. And he doesn't have to think about what he's giving back, because his family needs are taken care of. But he's so focused on giving back and like seeing other students or entrepreneurs go chase their dreams. And he's 60 something, 70 something.
And even you being inspired out of that.
Yeah, right? Like for me being a college student. So I started up a company called University Avenue, and it was like a college textbook trading app, and I didn't have enough money to fund it, but I still think it's a great idea. And then I started up a company called Tire King, and it was like drop shipping tires from China and then doing like Uber, kind of like attaching, right?
To your house.
To bring it to your house and cut the cost out. And so I kept like kind of building businesses, and then me and my wife had this opportunity to move out to Hawaii. So I moved out to Maui. And
my wife and I just got back from 9 days in Maui last week.
Yes.
Where like it was our first time in Maui. Not our first time in Hawaii, but first time in Maui, and we're like 100% going back next year.
Yes, Maui's unbelievable.
That's amazing.
So we lived in Kihei, have unbelievable friends there, and we had Anders, our first son, out there, and I was running lead gen programs for an insurance agency, and I learned how to use a lot of technology, learned sales skills, learned marketing skills, and then did it for like multiple other agents. And then eventually I was like, you know, like I want to kind of get out of this, and I want to get into tech. And the early stages of Utah, tech was happening kind of all over. And the tech that was happening at the time was like Weave had just created like their first office, and they were giving like free haircuts for like employees. I'm like, oh man, tech, free haircuts. Let's go.
The perks were crazy. I think at early Podium,
early Podium, early Weave, like these first tech companies that were bringing like kind of the Bay Area like aspects or perks to Utah. And so I knew that, and tech had been around a long time, but I think like kind of the Gen Z millennial interest for tech and getting into tech and seeing like the advantages of tech had started to pop off. This was 6.5 years ago for me to actually really see I need to be in tech. I know I need to be in tech. So I started thinking about different tech programs I could be a part of, whether it be in sales or go and create my own thing, and ended up meeting my co-founder. And he's like, hey, I got this idea in messaging, like just two-way messaging, like SMS, and I want to go compete with Podium. And I was like,
Via, right?
Yeah. He's like, I want to go and compete with Podium. And I was like, all right, cool. Saw like the first MVP product, and I'm like, I'm all in. I'm like, I know I can go and wield this into something that's absolutely massive. And so we divided our kind of responsibilities to where I was like more the operational, sales, marketing, and customer success. He was more product and finance, and it worked really, really well. And so we ended up taking Via from a company actually that was first funded by Weber State, and many people don't know this. We pitched Weber State's downtown program and got a $10,000 grant from Weber, and that was just kind of cool to full circle that was in their entrepreneur program as a student, got out, created a company, and then went back to Weber State, got funded for $10,000, which isn't a lot. I'm grateful. But it isn't a lot of money to like kind of get your company off the ground, but it was just enough to kind of like start that process.
Yeah.
And without going into a crazy amount of detail on Via, because there's so much in this story, because it really was the last, I mean, I guess not 2 years, but the last 4 years of my life. We took that company, we raised $75 million from tier one venture partners, from Todd Peterson, Ryan Smith, Josh James, Jeff Curl, so Stance, Domo, Vivint,
Yeah, you had some
Qualtrics,
awesome
Jazz owner, NHL owner, right? And then we went and raised from Tiger Global, you know, and they had 12 billion, right, in their current fund. And it was kind of nuts because we went from like 0 to 100 really fast. You know, we had like close to 250 employees.
Yeah, it's crazy.
We blew up. We had employees all over the world and worked with thousands of brands, sent hundreds of millions of messages through our platform. And so I kind of, leading into your original question of like how I got into kind of entrepreneurship and why agency, is that Via was tailored towards e-commerce merchants.
Yeah.
And I saw thousands of brands, and I worked with hundreds of agency owners.
Yeah.
On these brands, because agency owners were trying to talk to me and they're like, Greg, like, send me some leads, right?
Yeah,
and
totally.
I understood managed services. I understood like the lead gen. And so after I had that run with Via, and I was like, hey, it's time for me to resign and leave. And I did it because I didn't enjoy the late stage of my tech business. I just didn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't passionate anymore. Yeah. And that's a very hard decision to make, considering the amount of money I left on the table and like decisions that I had to make to do that. But I would say from an agency owner's perspective now, I kind of like found that niche of saying, hey, like, I'm going to take all this knowledge from technology that I know in email and SMS. I know how to build the tech.
Yeah.
I competed against all the tech that everybody uses. And I wonder how good I could be, right? Kind of converting still an entrepreneurial kind of journey into tech, but kind of take my tech knowledge and turn it into a managed service and other managed services for brands and businesses. And so it just kind of like was the easiest transition for me outside of going and creating another tech company, which I'm now doing again. Yeah. And I'm stupid for doing this, but I feel like with the Via journey and then kind of this transition, it was just like such a natural transition into agency. Yeah. And so that's kind of how I found, one, the entrepreneurial itch, but then kind of transition into like, had this insane run, created a $350 million company plus, and like I'm only 30 at the time. And so seeing like what could happen next with the agency and managed services, it's just like, okay, now I kind of have this like massive umbrella of knowledge from tech to how you manage the tech for people and the customer success that goes along with it. So
I think it's a great transition because with all of your interactions that you had at Via and building some of those early other ventures, like to take all of those learnings and all the people you interacted with, it becomes an easier transition to managed services, especially if you're staying in kind of the similar niche, similar space.
Yeah.
You know?
And that was my hope, right? Is I didn't want to branch too far away from the industry, because once you go as deep as you do into tech, just like you are currently an agency with Scroll, it's like you don't want to do something that you're not good at and be kind of pretending that you're good at it.
Yes.
You want to be the expert. So any people kind of listening in the agency space, it's like you don't need to be a full stack agency when you first start your agency. Yeah. You just need to be good at one thing. Yep. And that one thing for me was SMS. Like we started with SMS. I'm like, no one has sent more messages than we have through a platform. I be like very cocky in saying that, but it's just like no one has sent that many messages. I know, because most of them are like, yeah, we managed 18 clients or even 160. I'm like, okay, well, we managed like 5,000 brands messaging. Yeah. And at any given time, our platform's always sending. And so I think part of me was just like, hey, I know I need to kind of go in here. And so I'm just like, I'm going to take this strategy into this of what I was able to witness, or not build the software, but just manage it. And so that transition for me was just like, hey, I just want to be the expert of this one thing. And like in email, it was very much the same thing, right? It's just like, okay, now how do I kind of transfer this into email? And then it's like, okay, well, with the retention marketing, you have like your email, your SMS, your push notifications, and maybe some user generated content in there. Yeah. And so I kind of started looking at like, how do you actually get more leads in the agency space? And if you haven't already figured this out, an agency or in tech, agency owners to agency owners, like, hey bro, I'll send you leads, you send me leads, right? And then what ends up happening is like, you don't talk to each other for a while. Yeah. The only way you get leads is if you build authentic relationships and go deep with agencies.
100%.
Right? So it's like, hey bro, like we hang out on the weekends, we went and golfed, right? Whatever it is.
That's how you get leads.
That's how you're going to get leads. Yeah. The other side to it is if you're going to go to a tech founder only has a certain amount of brands. Well, guess what? There's 150 agencies at their door at any given time wanting leads. Yep. And it becomes a massive challenge for a tech founder to say, like, who are the agency owners that I'm going to give these leads? But I don't want to fatigue my brands because of how many times I'm introing them to try to
100%.
be like friends or get leads from other agencies to put on my tech platform. So what I've actually found to be the best way outside of doing like podcasts and a lot of other things is actually going to a tech founder and saying, hey, tech founder, I want to be another onboarding employee for you. That's free.
Yeah.
So you go to the tech founder, let's say it's Klaviyo or kind of somebody similar to Klaviyo, let's say in this case, SendLane, because this is what we did with Jimmy Kim and Ryan. Went to them and said, hey, we're going to onboard your client for free. You teach us how to onboard. You give us the milestones that they need to hit. You give us all the documentation. We'll just create the process and we'll onboard them. After we onboard them, you give us the permission to upsell them on our managed services because we're going to use your platform.
Yep.
And it's just like this easy lead gen funnel where I'm like, if you want to approach a tech founder and get a ton of leads, become a sole partner of that tech founder and start onboarding his customers for free, because then he doesn't have to pay for overhead, or she doesn't have to pay for overhead.
100%.
Right. And then they get pure top line growth to where they don't have to save that money in trying to like create more customer success roles. You become their customer success extension. They trust you more and they start to give you more brands.
Yeah. The funny thing is, like, Scroll has done the same thing with White Label. Like, that's our bread and butter. And we pretty much more than like 60% of our revenue now is through White Label partners, through other agencies. I mean, we've worked with probably like 50 plus pretty close partners. We have now like about a dozen very, very strategic partners where they pretty much onboard all of their clients with us. Yep. And we're their exact extension, right? And now, like, we launched our own new offer where with these strategic partners, we got good enough that now we run these other agencies' ads. And so we're running their ads, they're funding the ad spend, they onboard them, and then they just onboard them with us. And then on the back end, we're developing a staffing agency to help staff if they need, fulfillment support internally. Yeah. So like we're trying to create that fully vertically integrated agency, and it's been super rad. It's been fun. And it's only come from our learnings, getting really deep and really involved with other strategic partners to learn their business models. It's like there's no other way to do it. You have to. Yeah. 100%.
I think without learning, like kind of to what you're trying to do of a white label partnership, the only way you're going to do it, because we're doing it with like a few other agencies, like those strategic partnerships, there's always a bigger agency than you. Yeah. Bigger agencies tend to lack quality, and not a knock on massive agencies, but the quality starts to slip a little bit more. Yeah. Whereas like if you're a boutique agency who's hustling and maybe you have 19, 20 clients that you're working with, and then you kind of have managed like some sort of pod structure to kind of manage these clients' expectations, fulfillment, there's processes and SOPs you've created. But there's something kind of beyond that with a massive agency. It's like, hey, you aren't good at this, and if you try to in-house this, it's going to slow you down. Yeah. Let me take that over, right? Yep. To your point of 100%. Like white label, let me take it over with my team, and we're going to be that team to where you can add whatever margins on top that you want. Yeah. Right. Exactly. But we'll be your team. Like we'll be the XYZ at, whatever your name brand is or agency is, and we'll do a much better job at that one thing than you will. We get paid because we're happy with the price that you're setting. You get paid because it's just pure profit to you. Yep. Right. And your customer's getting the fulfillment. So it's just like a win for the customer, a win for the agency owner that wants to be underneath somebody that probably has a better lead gen or a better pipeline of customers. And then somebody, like that company is going to say, like, this is just...
It's too good. As Michael Scott says, it's a win-win.
Yeah.
Win-win.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, like we have an agency partner out of Oklahoma, and they serve home service businesses, and their goal is to, basically turn their revenue around within 3 months. And then after that 3 month, they onboard with us, and we do 100% of all their digital marketing. We run all of their lead gen. We redesign their complete website if they need it, and then we do all of their local SEO. And so they have 100 plus clients with us, and they've been a strategic partner for like 5 years, and they're not going anywhere because we absolutely kill it. Yep. Right. So like those kind of strategic partnerships are like, if you're in the agency space, you need to go deep. Yep. Like you just need to go deep. You really need to form these relationships, whether it be through messaging. These guys are in Oklahoma. We fly out there. They come out here. Like, we're that close now. We just went to his wedding a couple weeks ago. Yeah. And so it's like you just become that close if you want to, and if you want to like be that strategic partner.
Yeah. Well, if you want to grow your agency, agency growth is really tough, I think, in the beginning for anybody. Having my own experience with it. Because just because I created a company that was massive, right, and had a kind of a Cinderella story from like how much money you raised to your valuations and how quickly we accelerated that. Stop all that, right? And now it's like I got to go create an LLC again.
Yeah, you
I
got
got
to
to create a new Slack channel again.
Yeah.
I got to go create a new Gmail. So
So crazy.
I challenge like a lot of people that like when you put people on a pedestal from like their past history of what they've done to like what they actually have to do. In a lot of ways, people think I have this like absolute massive agency. Don't get me wrong, like we're doing really well from an agency's perspective in only our second year. But I would say like it's because I have, relationships in the industry that are like, hey, like Greg, like you're an agency owner, like, oh, I want to do this with you. But in a lot of way, your early stage growth to agency is what relationships actually matter. But I wouldn't even be focused on accelerating your growth. I'd be focused on your fulfillment. So for the first year, we only carried 8 or 9 clients. And I did that kind of intentionally where I told my team, I just want fulfillment down.
Yeah.
Right.
We absolutely
I
need to
don't
nail
care
it.
about anything else. We can grow later. I can turn on the tap and go and sell people.
Yep.
I know that I can go and do that. Right.
Yeah.
But I'm like, that's not my intention. Our fulfillment has to be exceptional. And so with Data Rebels, that was like the whole point. It was like, hey, what's the onboarding process look like? What's the kickoff call look like? What does task management look like? How do we kind of like refine that and go even deeper and say, okay, what do we kind of like plan for reactive? What do we plan for proactive? How do we actually go and accelerate this person's growth? What reports does that person care about? Why do they care about those reports? Do we have to build custom reporting? How much of the lies can we take out of the platform from attribution and modeling? Yeah. And then how do we actually nail fulfillment to where when we're working with, right, other agencies, there's this really like weird culture in agency world with attribution.
Yes.
And it's like, it's so stupid. And to every agency owner is like, just knock it off. Like, just like work together. It's just like you're eating each other alive with this idea of like performance models, and then like you come at the end of the month and Shopify or brand says I made $1 million, and your platforms they're saying this and ads are saying this and everybody's saying we did all this stuff and we made $5 million. And this person's like
14.
Yeah, exactly. So like I guess I'm challenging people, like for me it's just like fulfillment's the most important thing to focus on in the beginning. And then attribution, all that kind of stuff is kind of interesting to talk about, but fulfillment. Like customers, going back to like what has led me to have some success in entrepreneurship is just Alan Hall's point around customers. It's the only thing that matters. Their experience is the only thing that matters.
100%.
And so with our customers, it's kind of been the same thing to where it's like those relationships kind of, once they see you as an agency owner, not just like there to kind of check into the platforms and like check out and like there's no real relationship. Once they see you like actively trying to build their business and an extension of their team, like it's actually like crazy how much they'll trust you with other
just shifts
tasks, right? And then they'll say, hey, like, do you know anybody in this space? Like, hey, I need this. And it's weird because I have like this business perspective as an operator at kind of a higher level. And then I kind of come into some of these businesses where I have these, rich people that will be like, hey, like I'm building this brand. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, what do you spend on ads? Like, we spend like $200,000 a month. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, what are you making? And they're like, oh, we only make this. And I'm like,
I have no idea.
And I'm like, what? It's crazy because I actually view agencies that you can't under leverage actually how much power
you have as a trusted advisor.
As a trusted advisor.
Yeah, no, 100%.
For sure.
We literally just had this conversation in our all hands meeting. I guess it was on Tuesday. Well, one thing that I started at Scroll was I had every single person every single week, and then maybe this is too like corporate of us, but they have to pick topic and present on it to the entire staff. So they have to pick a topic and present, and I had one of our ad buyers present, and his topic was like customer relationship, right? And we got into the nitty gritty of like how every single touch point, whether it be email, message, Slack, like whatever it is, especially your calls, like every touch point with the customer is a trust building exercise. Like every time you talk to the customer, it's either building trust or you're losing trust, And so like it needs to be taken very seriously. Yeah. Right. All it takes is like literally one slip up to lose trust.
Yeah. And a lot of it, I think, stems to your point. I think it's a brilliant idea around trust is that they don't see you every day. Yeah. Right? They see you in the weekly meeting, usually. Like some
agencies, it's never.
Yes.
Which
some
is
agencies,
crazy.
like a month.
Yeah.
Right? Like, hey, we'll see you in a month. But I think It's because you have like two types of business owners. They look at you as the performance person. And like, it's not what you've done for me in the past, what you've done for me lately, a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I think the other person is like, hey, like I value this relationship so much. And then you as an agency owner, if you're a crappy person, like will take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Because you go into audits on some of these brands that you've done and you're like, not even just trying to earn and get the business, but just looking at it and you're like, no one's touched this account.
Yeah.
Right. Like I just did an audit for a brand that does.
Do it all the time. Every week we see this.
Yeah. Like I mean,
crazy.
I did an audit myself, and this brand's doing like 40 or 50 million in revenue a year. And the person's only spending $400 a month in SMS and email. And anytime they drive email or SMS, like the average return on the low end is like $17,000 when they spend.
Yeah.
And then the higher mutts are like 18,000 because they have like a high ticket product. And I'm like, okay, this person's being paid $200,000 a year to do performance marketing on SMS and email. They're spending $800 and they're doing 99% automations.
Yeah.
And they're coming back to you with those automated numbers, as opposed to any A/B testing or like copy or creative or any type
email
of
and
just
SMS
like,
should be like
yes.
their number. It should be their number one highest return.
Yes. Yeah.
Like marketing tactic, right?
And it's tough because like, honestly, that's where you have those two business owners, and then the business owner's perspective shifts once they've had a person come in and take advantage of them. Then it jades the agency space to where you have incredible agency owners who are like, listen, I'm an extension of your team. I have an insanely awesome process and I'm going to work with you. But the business owner is like, hey, like I'm fine to sign up, but then they treat you as a pure performance partner, but they give you unrealistic expectations from the get-go, and you're always battling against that. So it's just like having like this symbiotic relationship between agency owner and brand business owner is so important, because you're going to get the most out of your agency if they feel trusted.
100%.
But you're also going to get the most out of the brand if they trust you.
Yep.
And you're going to start to see these ideas that are like, you know, a little gray in the sense where like they may not understand them, but they're like, hey, I trust you to go execute on them. And then you do. And it's like, man, you just had a 50% lift in rev or app downloads or, you know, whatever it may be. So
No, trust is literally the like foundation of business, right? It truly is. And it's like, it's a huge piece to growth, to unlocking whatever needs to be unlocked.
Yeah, absolutely. I think without trust, like, yeah, I mean, it's simple. It's just like business principle, like 101, you know, an agency is just like, you need to be a trusted person. And that's why I would advise agency owners just starting out, right? Or even in the middle, it's like, don't add services if you're not the expert of the service, or you haven't put in the time. And it's kind of interesting. Like for us, we go even more deep than probably what I would anticipate most people when they start an agency. They're like, hey, I watch YouTube videos.
Yeah.
I played in the platform, or I ran it once for a brand, which is great that you have foundational knowledge.
Yeah.
But there's a reason why, like on one pager I'll send over to people, I'll say, these are all my certifications. And these are certifications that the platform offers. And this certification for Klaviyo's product certification took me freaking like 14 hours of just watching videos, taking notes, passing the little quizzes at the end, right?
Yeah.
But by doing that, it's like, oh, okay, like I actually know how to use and or, right? And what that actually means to get audience, where people will say, hey, send me the segmentation. And what's interesting is all the flows and the segmentations that people have built out, we go and check those from and or and like in a high level audit. And we're like, these aren't pulling in the right people.
Yeah.
So you actually have like data that's lying to you. And so I think having those certifications, again, of just being the expert in one thing. So if you start an agency, it's like, okay, SendLane, whatever you're going to use, leverage everything that they have. Their libraries, their QAs, what their customers are saying, what do their customers want, interviewing their customer success people, top to bottom, and do all that stuff and have that knowledge, because confidently, when you go and actually sign a contract with a person, they start paying you.
Awesome. So I think chatting a lot about agency life, about building an agency, what do you think is kind of next? And it seems like the search party and what you're getting into a search party is kind of the next step in this direction of, you know, handling things for agencies.
Yeah. So me and Nick, so if you don't know Nick, he's with the Grounded Company, right?
We love Nick.
He's an incredible
Me and
guy.
Shane love Nick.
So I actually, when I first started my agency, I just put it out. I'm like, hey, I want to interview 15 agency owners. And Nick was one of those people I interviewed, and he had worked with me in the past in VIA, and we had several clients from his on our platform that he had managed, like Dixon Flannel and a bunch of others.
Yeah.
And anyways, so when I talked to Nick, we just kind of had this brainchild where I'm like, you know what's really frustrating? And he's like, what? And I'm like, when a brand asks, right, me, who do you recommend for paid ads? And I toss that lead over to the agency owner. I have no clue how they do. I don't know if the brand's happy with it, other than if I ask them about it. Maybe they come in, maybe they don't. Maybe they go find their own paid ads person. But oftentimes it's just like, if you're not a full stack agency and you focus on one thing, and maybe you have like 3-4 core services, but you need another person, you want those people to be trusted sources. And with Search Party, we're like, well, what if me and you, Nick, create kind of a, say, group that agency owners join? They're kind of fully vetted by us, and they come into, like, let's say a Slack group to kind of start, but they come in and they have to present their knowledge to other agency owners. And so you have tiers of, like, you know, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Tier 3, like maybe just getting started. Tier 2, like we're starting, we have a few clients. And then tier 1's like, we are the elite of what we do. So like a scroll, like we are the best at what we do. But you come in and you give other knowledge to other agency owners, and it's a requirement of like
being a part of the
group.
group.
Elevating the group, right? So if you're like, hey, like we do email and SMS, but Greg, you come on and you show 15 tools that help your clients, you're like, oh my gosh, like that knowledge it's like gold, right?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean,
And
it's
so,
what masterminds are all
yes,
about.
yes. But we kind of take this to where it's like, hey, we want it to be an opportunity for the agency owners to be able to meet other agency owners in the search party, because they want to search for other people who are vetted, who actually know what they're doing, who care about their customers, right?
Yeah.
Like to an extreme level. And then you have this other side, which is, you know, your brands and businesses. So we're like, well, if we create a search party and the brands come to us through the search party and they say, hey, I'm looking for Facebook ads, I'm looking for email, I'm looking for SEO, I'm looking for creative, who do you recommend? So they come through the search party, they're looking for their growth partner. We want to be able to take the members of this group and say, hey, brand X, you actually can't buy top tier. You actually are more in tier 3, where you can spend X amount in retainers. How long's the contract? So we can kind of vet the brand's needs against the agency's kind of like
Where
stage,
their expertise
right?
is. And 100%.
Age, stage, payment, expertise, to where it's like sometimes, you know, and I feel like in the beginning, agency owners are chasing revenue, and they're just picking up anything they can. But then they start to get clients where you're like, you know, in 3 months, I feel like you're going to cancel anyways, because there's variables I can't control. Like you're not spending enough on paid ads. You're not spending anything on creative. You actually don't have product market fit. Like you're still trying to figure out your brand. And so like for me, like I typically like to work with brands doing like a minimum of 5 million a year. And that's like kind of my threshold, because at that point they've had a few years underneath their belt. Like they do have some sort of
revenue.
list. They have some sort of data that I can pull for at least 3 or 4 years to see like, okay, what's your year over year growth? What's your returning customer rate? What's your first time customer rate? Like how are the dips? How are they elevating? When were you spending the most money? So I ask myself a lot of these questions, because then I know, okay, I'm going to set myself up selfishly for the most success. And I think
you have to, especially to deliver at the level that you deliver at, right? So.
And that's where Search Party kind of came into play, which was, let's match the brands at stage with the stage that they're at. So if like they're in stage 3, where let's like they're just getting started, but somebody's like, yeah, like I'll take a $200 a month retainer.
Yeah. And they probably do a good job.
And they do a great job, and they're happy. And that's like, bam, connection made. And so the other side to it is just like, okay, like we're going to do like events as well. But rather than agency owners having their own booths and spending $5,000 on an event, I'm like, you go to events all the time and some of them are hit or miss, right? Where are your customers there? Is your audience there? So why don't we just roll it underneath the search party? So we actually did this where an event was like $2,000. We rolled 4 of us underneath it, and we just put our names on the bottom of kind of like branding. And we're like, okay, cool. Like I just paid $200. That event was terrible. We got no customers from it, but I feel much better about losing $200. And then as you go into bigger events, it's just like, well, what if we took 5 of our tier 1 partners, we actually want to go and create, you know, a $12,000 booth where people are like, oh man, like I don't really want to do that. But now it's like, hey, this is a $2,000 booth, but look at what we're able to do. And we're much bigger at that point to the brand.
Yeah. Oh,
but
yeah.
referrals and leads go directly to you as a result of this. And so it's kind of like taking that principle of like going deep with agency owners and saying, do you want to go deep with the search party? Because we're going to go and get the brands. We'll line it all up for you really easily, right? Funnel people in. And then we're going to create the educational side, because the thing I hate about Slack channels and all these other ideas is that there's no value.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, as soon as the value's not there for the brand or the value's not there for the agency owner, one, they don't care about it. They won't pay for it. Doesn't make sense. And so with Nick and I, it was just like, we just hated like not really knowing like one, where the leads went, but two, just being like, why don't we create like a really deep partnership where it's like these agency owners get together a lot more. Like we're strategizing a lot more, right? You're partnering with other agencies a lot more, and you actually kind of like rise like that boat, I guess, if you will, of who wants to jump on in the search party and do it. And so we're kind of finalizing all the details. Like I think probably by the end of this month, we're actually going to have like an offering to an agency owner at like 3 tiers that they can buy into, and then like kind of offerings to like brand owners. And it's like, hey, from this is what you're going to get. But we're kind of adding, you know, 450 other agency owners to it currently. And then we have like a list of 12,000 that may come over too. So this isn't going to be like some like kind of smaller thing. Yeah. But the idea is just like, hey, the community that we're driving, you have to have value. So when you come in as an agency owner, you're going to see other agency owners delivering value. And it's not just pitching, because they can't pitch. No brands are in there. We control the brands. Yeah. And so the whole idea is like, I want to see the education. Because if you get on and you're like, man, we're really struggling with this, like, and let's talk customer success or whatever, that's what we've been able to do with the search party. So still growing as far as like the idea is concerned, but I think it's evolving into an agency's true partner and a brand's true partner, that if they go through it, they'll be happy with the type of agency they're getting set up with. And then the agency will be happy because they can go and create leads out of meeting other agency owners, like if they want to go deep with them, right? And so we're pretty excited about the idea.
I love that. I'm stoked for you guys too, and we'll definitely chat more. I know Nick's talked to Shane and I about it, and I think what you guys are doing is awesome. I'm really, really stoked about it. What advice would you give agency owners that are really trying to up their, I think, customer relationship? Right. I know we've given a lot, I think talked a lot about like some of the initial things that agency owners should do when they get started, but like talk to me about the customer experience piece and how to elevate that.
Yeah. It's a great question. I mean, I don't think anybody truly knows how to like elevate their customer experience to where a customer is like always going to be happy and you're always exceeding results and expectations. But I've just found like there's some principles to just be true. Like the first principle I think is that you have to treat the customer with the respect that they deserve, but treating them in a way that they want to be treated, which is how do they want you to succeed? So defining expectations, right? Yeah. What is it that you want me to do that in your eyes looks like success? And then if you have a brand owner or a business owner say, I want $1 million by tomorrow, you're probably going to have a really hard time, truthfully. Yeah. But most people are rational. Most, not all. But most people are rational to where if you say, hey, what are your expectations of me and my team? And you kind of get on that level. It's like, well, I want consistent reporting. Like they'll give you some things that like if they haven't ever worked with an agency, it's a little bit harder to find that. But if they worked with an agency before, like this is what we got burned on our last agency with. Yeah. Or, hey, I'd really appreciate a report or where we're at, how much we spent, right? All that kind of stuff. Yep. So go do what they say. The second thing is be your word. So that's something that is a value, right? We have like kind of some values that we follow, but be your word is we never cut corners. We're always transparent. So oftentimes I feel like agency owners just want to tell their brands what they want to hear or business owners what they want to hear as opposed to just telling them the truth. Yeah. Right. So it's like, hey, we created everything, curated everything.
It's not even like faking the data, but like, but basically just twisting it to make it work.
To make it look better. Right. Yeah. As opposed to being like, hey, we sent off 3 campaigns. 1 was a failure. 2 were successful. Yeah. You made XYZ, right, in 1 week. And so I just feel like if you are your word, right, that's something that you only have like one. It's the only thing you really have as a business owner is your word. So be your word. And I think the last kind of principle would be develop your operating cadence and your SOPs around the business owner's schedule. This is something I feel like gets missed a lot, which is how busy is the actual business owner? What are they doing every single day? And are they actually checked in to have a meeting with you?
Yeah.
As opposed to like, I got to go drop these leggings off. I got to go do this. And even at the highest level, like we work with brands doing $152 billion a year in revenue. And when you're working with a brand like that, those owners, like it's opposite. It's like they don't even know what's going on beneath them. But then even at 150 million, there may only be 30 people and they're still doing everything.
Yep.
And so you just need to meet them where they are, like on an operational cadence, and say, hey, when do you want to meet? And what's your preferred communication style? And if it's text, don't try to force them into a project management tool like Monday. Don't try to force them into email, because that's how your team works to scale as an agency owner. You have to be flexible, because business owners truly appreciate flexibility when they're doing things that actually have a higher priority than what you think that their priority is. Because their priority isn't to say, oh, okay, like I need to meet with this person every day. Their priority is like, I just want to know that my ads are performing. I want to know that my email is performing. I want to know that creative's on time. And sometimes people like to have control over that. But again, I feel like it's not a one size fits all with every brand owner, as you know, right? We're not the same. And so if you can communicate, meet where they're at, be real, and ultimately just like align from the very beginning of the call. What does success look like? How do you want me to communicate to you? Like, what's important to you? How do you want me to work with your team? Is there a point person on your team? Do you expect to have this person long term, or is there going to be change management that I have to expect, right? Asking these things. And then last thing I promise would be sending out a monthly like Google form or something, survey, Qualtrics, right? Whatever it may be, asking them, rate the professionalism of my team. How did I do? How did we do? Did we exceed your expectations, or what could we have done better? Like, create something that's kind of a brutally honest survey, and then challenge your team to say, hey, this is what we're weighted against with this customer. And I'm more like the person's like, I'm bummed that we didn't hit these. So how do we fix it? So you shouldn't be scared of the feedback, because it's backward facing. It's in the past. We can't change it. But I think like when it's advice, it's forward facing. So it's like, hey, feedback, we can look back and learn. But now what's the actual like practicality of us improving this for this specific customer? And those would be like probably my 4 go-to wherever you're at in your agency. Like, those things can always be improved.
I love that. It's huge pieces of advice. We've taken a lot of that feedback, I think, the feedback piece especially to heart. Like, it's one of our core pillars is we're always asking for feedback. Sometimes it's anonymously, like through a survey. Sometimes it's more specific on a call. Sometimes it's Shane or I'm, as the agency owners that don't necessarily interact day to day with clients, we'll call up random clients and say, hey, how you doing? What's going on? Do you have 5 minutes to chat and give us some feedback, right? So like that is huge in order to grow, in order to fix a lot of stuff. What's next for Greg? What, like, are you want to stay in tag? Like, what's next for Greg?
So I run a lot of different businesses, right? We have Data Rebels, which is the digital marketing agency. We have Creator Mate, which basically runs brands around influencers. We have Saw Property Management. We've got Malohi Funds. We have
You did so much stuff,
Chaos Holdings. We've got Search Party. We've got Hacker Social, which is like a golf networking group. And all this stuff can be found on LinkedIn if you're like really interested. But yeah, I am starting another tech company, and it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. But I'll just say this much. It's accelerating. It will most likely be venture funded in the next month, which will be pretty exciting. And I'm excited to release it to everybody. So I'll just tease it out there for anybody who knows me. I never really thought I'd get back into tech, but I'm super excited about it. So
I love it, man. That's fantastic. Where can people find you? Where's the best place to hit you up?
I mean, I used to be super active on Instagram, but I deleted it because I was like, man, like this is too much work. But now I'm on LinkedIn. Well, I've always been on LinkedIn, but I'm really active actually on LinkedIn. Like, I just share my thoughts, things that I like, things that I see. And so, yeah, if you have any desire to chat with me, or if you need help or advice with something, just hit me up on LinkedIn.
Sweet. Well, Greg, thanks so much for the time today and for the advice and chatting all things agency. I think you brought a lot of things to the table today, and I hope our audience responds, and I think they will. I think you give a lot of advice on how to take care of your customers, how to build an agency that actually cares, and then how to really just absolutely crush it in business. So thanks so much for coming on today.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, and shout out to Scroll for having me on. This is awesome. So
You bet, Greg. Thanks, man. That's a wrap.